People have been asking the same questions about the Giza pyramids for centuries. Turns out, most of them have been answered. Let's go through them. 1. The pyramids were not built by slaves. Every Hollywood movie got this wrong. Completely wrong. Archaeologists dug up the workers' village right next to the pyramids. It had bakeries, breweries, and medical facilities. These were not the conditions of slaves. The workers were paid in food, beer, and shelter. They even named their own work crews. One crew called themselves Friends of Khufu, another went with the Drunkards of Menkor. Slaves don't name their gangs. Case closed. 2. We actually know who built them. Not aliens, not a lost civilization. We know this because one of the workers kept a diary. His name was Merer. He was a middle-ranking inspector who led a crew of about 200 men. In 2013, archaeologists found his logbook on the Red Sea coast, the oldest papyrus ever discovered in Egypt, written 4,500 years ago. It records his team's daily work transporting limestone blocks from the quarries to the pyramid site. It reads like a spreadsheet. What was needed, what was delivered, what was still owed. Entry after entry, day after day. And it names the man overseeing the entire operation, Ankaf, Khufu's own half-brother. We don't just know who built the pyramids. We know their names. 3. How the stone blocks were transported. The pyramids are nowhere near a quarry. The limestone came from miles away. The granite came from Aswan, hundreds of kilometers to the south. So how did they move millions of multi-ton blocks across the desert? They didn't move them across the desert. They floated them. Merer's diary records his crew making 2 to 3 boat trips every 10 days between the quarries in Giza, carrying around 30 blocks per trip. The blocks went by boat down the Nile, then through a network of canals and an artificial lake right up to the base of the plateau. Why 31 pyramids are all in one desert strip? The pyramids stretch across a narrow, seemingly random strip of inhospitable desert. For a long time, nobody could explain why. Then, in 2024, researchers using radar satellites found the answer buried under the sand. A 64-kilometer-long branch of the Nile River, now completely dried up, that used to run right alongside all of them. It's called the Aramat branch. It dried up around 4,200 years ago during a massive drought. The pyramids aren't randomly placed. They were built along a river. That river just doesn't exist anymore. 5. How they aligned the Great Pyramid almost perfectly to true north. The Great Pyramid is off from true north by less than 1/15 of 1 degree. That's more accurate than many modern buildings. And they did it without GPS, without compasses, without satellites. The answer turned out to be embarrassingly simple. A stick. An engineer named Glenn Dash ran an experiment on the day of the autumn equinox. He planted a rod in the ground and tracked where its shadow fell throughout the day. On the equinox, the shadow tip traces an almost perfect east-west line. The Egyptians just had to do that, then find north from there. The slight error in the pyramid's alignment even matches the slight error the shadow method produces. They calculated the equinox by counting 91 days from the summer solstice. A stick and some patience. 6. How the blocks were actually moved and lifted. The blocks average around 2 tons each. Some are much heavier. Ramps, sleds, and organized labor. That's the answer. A ramp discovered at the Hatnub Quarry in 2018 showed exactly how steep inclines with post holes on either side for ropes, letting workers drag blocks upward using leverage. Wet sand was poured in front of sleds to dramatically reduce friction. Tomb paintings actually show workers doing this. Copper chisels shaped the limestone. Dolerite hammers handled the granite, and somewhere between 20,000 and 30,000 workers moved roughly 800 tons of stone every single day. Not magic, just scale. 7. Why the pyramid is so precisely flat at the base. The Great Pyramid's base covers 13 acres. Across that entire surface, the variation in height is less than 2 centimeters. How do you flatten 13 acres of rock to within 2 centimeters without a laser level? Water. The Egyptians likely dug a shallow grid of channels across the plateau and filled them with water. Water always finds perfectly level. They used the water line as their reference and cut the rock down to match it. Then they drained it. Ancient hydraulic engineering. Brutally effective. 8. What the internal shafts in the Great Pyramid are for. The Great Pyramid has narrow shafts running from the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber up through the body of the pyramid at specific angles. For a long time, people called them air shafts. Then people said they were star shafts pointing to Orion and the North Star. The star shaft theory has some truth to it. The shafts do point toward where significant stars would have been during construction. The Egyptians believed the pharaoh's soul traveled to join the imperishable stars after death. The shafts were almost certainly spiritual pathways, exit routes for the soul, not ventilation for the living. The North Star shaft was actually pointed at a star called Alpha Draconis, which was the pole star at the time of construction. 9. What the relieving chambers above the king's chamber are for. Above the king's chamber, there are 5 mysterious hollow spaces stacked on top of each other. Early explorers thought they were hidden rooms full of treasure. They are not. They are engineering. Each chamber distributes the enormous weight of the pyramid above it so it doesn't come crashing down onto the burial room below. Without them, the king's chamber ceiling, 9 granite slabs weighing 400 tons, would crack under the load. The Egyptians understood structural engineering well enough to solve a problem they knew would still exist 4,500 years later. And it worked. 10. Why the Great Pyramid originally looked completely different. The pyramid today looks like rough stepped limestone. That is not how it looked originally. The entire exterior was covered in polished white Tura limestone casing stones, fitted so tightly together that you could barely slide a piece of paper between them. It would have been smooth, blinding white, and would have reflected sunlight across the desert for kilometers. Most of those casing stones were stripped off over centuries to build medieval Cairo. A few remain at the base of the north face. The pyramid we see is essentially the exposed inner core of what was once an entirely different-looking structure. 11. What the pyramid's name actually means, the Great Pyramid of Giza, is just what we call it. Merer's diary reveals the original name, Akhet Khufu. It means horizon of Khufu. This is significant. In Egyptian belief, the horizon was where the sun died and was reborn. Naming the pyramid Horizon of Khufu directly tied the pharaoh to that cycle: death, resurrection, eternal life. The pyramid wasn't just a tomb, it was a rebirth machine. 12. How they built straight, perfect edges all the way to the apex. When you're stacking 2.3 million blocks and need 4 flat triangular faces to meet at a single point 146 meters in the air, how do you keep everything aligned? Fighting rods and string lines. Surveyors would plant reference rods at the base corners and run string lines between them at precise angles. As each layer went up, workers would check the face angle against the reference lines. The sikhed, an ancient Egyptian unit of measuring slope, gave builders a consistent ratio to maintain across every single course of stone. Every layer, checked against the same formula, the geometry was baked into the process from the very beginning. 13. The Orion's Belt alignment. Real or myth? The popular theory says the 3 pyramids were deliberately placed to mirror the 3 stars of Orion's belt. It's partly real and partly not. The connection between Orion and the god Osiris, the god of death and resurrection, is genuinely documented in Egyptian belief. The star shafts inside the pyramid do point generally toward Orion, so the astronomical awareness is real. But the specific claim that the pyramids were precisely mapped to Orion's belt positions falls apart under scrutiny. The alignment only works if you flip the map upside down, which the original book promoting the theory quietly did without mentioning it. And the smaller third pyramid is placed in a way that actually created an optical illusion. Approaching by water from the Nile, all 3 pyramids appeared to be the same size. That's likely why Menkaure placed his pyramid where he did.